So at one point, Gilly turns to Sam and says,
I'm angry that horrible people can treat good people that way and get away with it.
and I'm like, what show have you been watching the whole time? Hey everybody, sorry for the late review. I want to talk about Game of Thrones Season 6, Episode 6, Blood of My Blood. Now, we correctly postulated last week that the title was a reference to something Dany was going to do. That is one of the things that Khal Drogo called Dany was Blood of My Blood. And we had to assume that it would mean the return of one of her dragons. And it did. There once again to be dragons here. The only issue is that the theories about Mad Queen Dany are beginning to come true, but I'm going to save that discussion for the very end. Let's first check in with Sam and Gilly at Horn Hill. Now, when they come down the path, and it shows that just gigantic kind of Roman-looking building, it turns out that that's actually Horn Hill. That's the ancestral home of House Tarly. Based on the size of it, though, I thought at once it would be the Citadel itself, or perhaps, part of the Citadel. Or perhaps it was, like a walled exterior of Old Town. Because to my knowledge, we have not yet seen the Citadel or Old Town. So I thought it would be one of those two locations. But apparently House Tarly has done quite well for itself. Sam's mother and sister welcome him with open arms. And they can't wait to hold the grandbaby. Sam is telling the story that little Samwell is their biological child. So that, he'll have protection. And the Tarleys will take him in because... being the last of Craster's son, the only surviving son of Craster, the poor kid has been through enough. He nearly became a White Walker. So at this point, it's clear that Sam is going to put the welfare of the child above all else, which is very appropriate, and it's very in character for him. The dinner with his father was very uncomfortable. The father is one of the just most one-dimensional characters we've seen on the show. Can't see his son for anything more than just the fat little kid that he sent off to serve at the wall, just because he was a disappointment because he ate too much bread. Sam has really come a long way, and he's come into his own, and equipped with Chekhov's sword, Heartsbane, and his Maester's chain. When he returns to Castle Black, he will be a force to be reckoned with. Sam is a character who I have really started to appreciate more. There have been a couple of things that he's done, like when he's talking to Jon about his true name, and Jon Snow says, why is my name Snow? And Sam says... he kind of thinks for a second. He says, because you're a bastard from the north. He's just very matter-of-fact about it. I really like that. And there was that other scene where he first meets Hodor, and he says, I spent enough time around ghosts to know a dire wolf when I see one. And he says, and you must be Hodor. And it was the happiest Hodor we ever got from Hodor. It's the happiest Hodor ever Hodored. Hodor. He's very excited that someone knows who he is and it's someone friendly. In this dark cave, in the darkness, Sam was a ray of light to Hodor. And it's funny, though, that's a dangling plot thread that Sam never mentioned to Jon that he ran into his brother and Hodor. Did it slip his mind? I think it slipped the writer's minds. It slipped George R.R. Martin's mind, is what I think happened. So he takes the sword, and Gilly says, won't your father come after you? And Sam says he can bloody well try. He showed so much patience listening to his father, taking the abuse, and finally he decides that he's a man, he's going to make his own destiny, and he's taking that damn sword because he knows he can do a lot more good with it north of the wall than, Randall Tarley is going to do with it hanging above his fireplace. So let's talk about Arya. I want to know more about what the writer's plans are for her. I mean, me and everyone else. But we spent, weeks and weeks and weeks with her training to be a faceless man, training to serve the many-faced God. And then, she's watching the play, and she's, I was never convinced that she was going to be no one. I was never convinced that a girl was no one. I was always convinced that a girl was Arya Stark. And when she left her sword needle under that pile of rocks, I knew she's not going to give up her old name, and she will eventually come back and take that sword. I predicted as much a few weeks ago. Can we roll that clip? She's absolutely still in there. And I think by the end of the series, we see Arya Stark go back, take Needle out from under that pile of rocks, and reclaim, her true name. So her training, much like Bran's, is incomplete. And it kind of leaves me wondering, what was the point of all of it? Just that, I mean, did she acquire some, stealth +1? Did she acquire some skills to be a better assassin? What did she really learn? Having her eyesight taken away, being a beggar girl, all she learned is that she's still Arya Stark. But she knew that from the beginning, so I wonder if it wasn't wasted time, devoting so many scenes of her training with Jaqen and the scenes with the waif. Now, it appears as though the waif is going to come kill Arya. And much like Sam said, I'd like to see her try. So Arya goes into the backstage area, and she's going to kill the woman who's been playing Cersei. And she turns out to be a very nice woman. And when she knocks the rum out of her hands, that was Arya basically spitting in the many-faced god's eye. But a question that woman asked Arya, she said, do you like pretending to be other people? And the answer is obviously no, she does not. And when we think about people who are very good at putting on masks and pretending to be something they're not, we have to talk about Marjorie Tyrell. The scenes at the High Sept this week, for me, were very disappointing, only because I was looking for a big battle and the end of the High Sparrow storyline. There's so many storylines happening that I kind of wanted to close the book on that one. And I wanted to close the book with quite a bit of blood pouring down those steps. That's actually a real location in Spain where they filmed. They augmented it with a bit of CG, but it's a beautiful scene. And as much as I don't particularly like Jaime Lannister, the shots of him, right in the foreground with the steps behind him, with the army, and that huge throng of people leading right out to the sea. Beautiful shot, really well done. Hats off to the cinematographer for this shot. But the High Sparrow outmaneuvers everyone except Marjorie. That's my theory, that she is playing everyone like she always does. And just last week, we saw her talking to Sir Loras, saying basically, we have to play their game. We can't give up. We have to make them believe that we've changed. And Sir Loras just says, just make it stop. So I wonder if she's playing along for her brother's welfare. And once they're all out of there, if she's going to come back at them some way. But the only problem is that Tommen seems to have literally drunk the Kool-Aid. I don't think Tommen's in on it. You've got to believe that Jaime was careless, not knowing where his king was. The Lord Commander of the Kingsguard should always know where the king is at all times, and it was careless of him to be surprised that way with the rest of the Kingsguard, with some kind of new armor as well. Did they forge it just for them? But to actually be surprised and taken, aback that way was very careless of him, and I wonder if it wasn't out of character for him to make a mistake like that, not know where Tommen was going to be. But all season, I've been waiting for Jaime to ride up those steps and lop the High Sparrow's head off, but it didn't happen this week. The High Sparrow outmaneuvered everyone, including the Queen of Thorns. Queen of Thorns, who is very Dowager Countess for me. I've been watching a little bit of Downton Abbey, which actually has a few Game of Thrones characters in it. Rose Leslie as, who played Ygritte. She plays a housekeeper. And then, of course, Ser Jorah Mormont plays in it as well as like a newspaper magnate. But really fun seeing these actors in different roles. And I didn't recognize Jorah immediately, but it was that voice. I recognized his accent immediately, and I said, "Who is that? Who is that?" And it's Ser Jorah. He has a very, very wonderful way of speaking. He's really is a great actor. So the Queen of Thorns was outmaneuvered, but I think that it is Marjorie pulling the strings. I think she's the puppet master, and she's playing a long con, and only the gods know what the outcome of that is going to be. She said last week she doesn't want to be a queen. She wants to be the queen. Now, Mace Tyrell, his speech to the troops, it was very rousing, but they didn't seem to be very roused by it, did they? And Jaime kind of looks at him like, it was a good speech. I'm trying to remember what he ended it with. It was, he's had his day. And he's very puffed up with his chest and just nobody's buying it. I did enjoy that. And it seemed like he didn't have much of an army. In the long shots, it seemed like there was maybe 20 infantrymen. That's not going to be enough. Maybe 30, but that's not going to be enough to take the city, so to speak. And it seemed like the High Sparrow had the crowd on his side. And when you look at that long shot I mentioned before of Jaime right in the foreground, and you can see Mace Tyrell and his army lined up at the bottom of the steps, and beyond that, this just throng of people, as I said before, they could easily overpower that army if it really came down to a fight. So I think I know Marjorie couldn't have known that, but it's good that there wasn't a battle. If you have any love for the Tyrells, which they don't really bother me. They haven't done anything that I'm aware of to the Starks, and that's where my allegiance lies. So I don't have a hard time rooting for the Tyrells, at least in this case. When Jaime goes back to see Cersei after, she just looks old and haggard, and it's partially the short hair, but she doesn't have the air about her that she used to have. She's been kind of beaten down a little bit, and she's just the spirit of vengeance at this point. If we're not going to get Lady Stoneheart, the least we can have is Cersei out for blood. But she says that Jaime is going to go to the Riverlands and help Walder Frey take back Riverrun from the Blackfish. Now, I was watching this with my dad, and he actually he hasn't seen all the previous seasons. He missed some of season 3, so obviously the whole thing with Robb Stark and the Red Wedding. I had to remind him of everything that happened, and I think this is the show's way of reminding everyone. The Red Wedding was really tough on a lot of people. And I know right after I saw it, I wanted blood. I wanted revenge. And we've been waiting 3 years for the revenge. And now that it seems like it's going to come, I've almost lost interest. I mean, we're so far removed from that pain and from Catelyn and Robb Stark. I mean, they're dead and buried. Just to bring Walder Frey back again after 3 seasons, like, oh yeah, this is a character too, and his sons, and to bring out Edmure Tully, who was actually married at the Red Wedding. And he's been in chains all this time. It was a little bit of a shock. It's been quite a while since we've seen this person, since we've seen these characters, or we've even cared about the twins or the Riverlands. I don't know even how often they're shown on the opening map. I haven't seen them lately, but it's just tough to muster up the enthusiasm I had 3 years ago right after the Red Wedding to really see Walder Frey dealt with. He's just been sitting in his hall. Just kind of hanging out. He's got, the backing of the Lannisters. Obviously, Kevin Lannister is sending Jaime. Well, it's Tommen, but it's Kevin pulling the strings, I assume, on a decision like this. Sending Jaime out to lead the army, which at least he wasn't stripped of rank the way that Barristan Selmy was. The scene where Jaime's taking off his armor was obviously very reminiscent of the same way that Sir Barristan Selmy, stripped off his armor and he threw the sword in front of Joffrey and said, "Melt it down and add it to the others." Really way to quit your job like a boss is the meme on that one. But Jaime still has a job. He's going to lead the army. Just he's no longer welcome in King's Landing. Speaking of characters we haven't seen in a long time, let's talk about what Bran is doing. So Hodor's sacrifice. Rest in peace, Hodor. Will we see him come back as a White or a White Walker? That's another popular fan theory. I kind of hope not. It would diminish his legacy if we had to, kill him again. Unless he was able to, a la Benjen Stark, resist the turning into the white process. I don't know if there were any children of the forest left who could possibly do that to him, but it would be good to see him come back. But let's talk about Cold Hands. I really feel like the show mishandled Cold Hands. He really should have been there to lead Bran to the Three-Eyed Raven at the end of season 4. And he should have been in incognito. We should not have known who he was until now, and then the reveal would have had a lot more impact. As it stands, he was just a deus ex machina at this point where, it seemed like Bran was about to be overrun by the Whites, and Mira is saying, "I'm sorry," and then all of a sudden he comes out. Now, the music on this scene and the filming was great. He's got that mace that's full of fire, and some of the moves he did where it wraps around a White and then he pulls them apart. It was really, really, really well done. Just the reveal that it was Uncle Benjen was rushed, and I don't think it had the impact that it could have had if they had introduced Cold Hands as a proper character at the end of season 4 when Bran first approaches the Three-Eyed Raven, like they should have. So finally, let's talk about Dany. Her speeches are getting a little tiresome for me. She seems to be making a lot of impassioned speeches calling for blood, and I mean, she was told the truth about her father by Sir Barristan, and she should learn from his mistakes because it seems as though she's slowly transforming into the Mad Queen. Is she really who we should be rooting for? I think I debated doing a whole separate video about the Mad Queen, but I'll just very briefly touch on it here. She comes to Westeros with the Second Sons, the Unsullied, and the Dothraki Horde. They're going to rape and murder and pillage and burn towns to the ground, towns with good people. She doesn't know anything about the Seven Kingdoms. She doesn't know Jon Snow. She doesn't know Sir Davos. She doesn't know, um, anything about the Lannisters. She doesn't know anything about the Riverlands. She doesn't know the players. She says she doesn't want to stop the wheel. She wants to break the wheel. So she doesn't care about any of the old houses, any of their allegiances, any of their alliances. She just wants to burn everything, I think. And she's going to show up in Westeros with her dragons, and hopefully, I almost said Tywin, hopefully Tyrion and Varys can rein her in somehow, because she's scaring me a little bit. I don't think she's who we want to be rooting for. When she, killed the slave masters in Astapor, I was rooting for her. And then she had the big speech last week where she burned them all, didn't she? That was impressive. But now this week she's on top of her dragon saying she's going to knock down the stone houses and kill the men in their iron suits. She's not looking to kill a particular house. She's going to kill everyone, and that's very dangerous. And for the first time in 6 years, I'm not sure I want to root for Dany anymore. Her storyline has been, accused of being kind of boring because she's just so perfect, and she has plot armor. She can never be hurt. But you've got to ask yourself, if this whole time watching her was the rise of the storyline's main villain, wouldn't it be that much more interesting? Well, we will hopefully find out next week. Now this week, the characters who were conspicuously absent included, Jon Snow, Ramsay, Sansa, Theon and Yara, Tyrion and Varys, Littlefinger, Davos, Melisandre, Tormund, and Brienne. These were major characters who were not seen this week. So next week we have the Broken Man, and there's a lot of speculation about what that refers to. The obvious choice would be Theon, but I don't know that they would devote a whole episode to Theon. It could be Jorah. We may see what Jorah's doing, but I have a feeling we won't see him again until next season. And then, of course, it could refer to Jon Snow, because he is very much broken at this point, and it's Sansa who's helping him kind of remember who he is. But I don't know that he's so broken at this point that the title would refer to that. So leave me a comment. Let me know who you think the Broken Man is. But either way, we will find out in a few days. As always, thank you very much for watching, and we will see you next time.